Hey, hi everybody. So I'm back. Here I just wanted to give you guys an understand about what, I guess some of the interviews that I've had, a little bit, a little quick, um, I don't know, quick insight into my background and what sort of software engineer I am, the kind of software programming I do, or let's say software development, because software development is more than just writing code, as we know. Um, right? So, pretty much what I do, I would say it's used as full stack. So, or I'd say the term full stack, I'll use that term. But when I say full stack, we're talking about, application level development all the way, from the user GUI interface, not really much of a designer, but yes, implementation. You give me a design, I can implement it, to the design. Anyway, but we're talking about the interface all the way down to the internals of what the system runs on, right? So if you talk about internals, I've done a lot of work with internals, not necessarily developing the internals, but understanding the internals to essentially use them in such a way where you understand the nuances of the internal systems so that you can gain the kind of performance that you want to gain for a particular feature that you're trying to develop or implement. So I've done a lot of things obviously in the world of, I shouldn't say obviously, but in the world of Linux software development, some Windows development. And you can see some of my books here. You got things like TCP/IP. So I've done a lot of like network stuff. These are some networking books that I have read through, and of course used for reference to do a lot of low-level network programming, a lot of memory manipulation, and all that kind of stuff in order to gain the amount of performance that we want. You want to squeeze every single ounce of performance out of the system. So you got to understand things at an internal level. So that's some, and working at the C level, C++. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously again, but I've also worked in the world of Java. So I've been working in Java for a long time. You can see Java, uh, what you call it, Corba, for those of those of you who've been around for a while. Corba is one of those integration technologies from way back. Um, essentially, it does a lot of what we see now in terms of interoperability. That's pretty much what it's all about. Basically, getting different systems to interoperate and talk to each other over networks and through interfaces and all that kind of stuff. So been doing it since back then. Um, you know, uh, I've been around since Java has actually began. The beginning of Java, let's say. Um, I got things like Genie over here, right? I don't know. A lot of people probably don't remember this. It's a set of protocols, pretty interesting, pretty cool. Um, allow you to do a lot of ad hoc communication-based system, Java spaces, all those kind of things. So a lot of different protocols and frameworks and all that kind of stuff throughout my development time. So as I said, I've done things in the world of embedded systems, going up into the stack, various kind of desktop applications, obviously web systems, different kinds of application servers. Done a lot of software development, all kinds of algorithms, algorithmic designs. I've done stuff. Hey, I've even done stuff in the medical world, as you can see right here. I have this book right here on vascular ultrasound and all that kind of stuff. So in that world, you're using things like you're performing analysis on images, using fast forward transform, a lot of linear algebra, all that kind of stuff. Even, you know, used neural networks and all that kind of stuff to develop and design systems that perform automatic reading for various kinds of images, not just in ultrasound, but also in the world of various what you call it, audio signals, let's just say. So anyway, so that's kind of my background. I would say it's pretty broad and deep. So deep and broad, deep in various areas, broad understanding of various techniques and tools and all that kind of stuff. And that's pretty much what I'm. So I would say I would consider myself a hardcore problem solver, essentially. Like I like to solve difficult problems, and I like to understand the intricacies of the software development language that I'm using to solve those various problems. Anyway, let's go on to, with the understanding of that being my background, and that's pretty much where I come from. Um, yeah, basically for interviews from that standpoint, let's say when I first got canned, laid off, fired, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. It's all the same crap, at least to me. But anyway, so what did I do? I went and did the regular route, right? You update your resume, you throw it on out there, and even before I actually was let go from the organization, um, you update your resume, you send it on out there, and yeah, you go the regular route by going through the various job boards and the various organizations. So I do job boards and the organizational website as well, right? And you do things like that, and then well, it didn't work. So obviously, as probably time progressed, and probably a month, I'd say about 3 weeks went by. So that's not working. So I changed up strategy a little bit. In addition to the job boards and whatnot, and the actual companies themselves, I started reaching out, LinkedIn, doing all that stuff, really, tapping people on the shoulder, hey, blah, blah, blah. That didn't really, that didn't work either, right? So now, two, say a month of doing that, 2 months of doing that, really didn't get much traction. Um, right? So about 3 months in, still doing the same thing, but 3 months in, probably now using a lot more automated tools because that's what you see, right? There's a lot of automated tools to fill out job applications and to change your resume to make it more adequate or more targeted for that particular job. So I started doing that, and that actually started to get me some traction. I started getting interviews. Um, and so I got several interviews. I tell you, I interviewed with a organization that is an automotive company. Right? So for essentially it was for developing essentially something related to making their application suite more secure and a bit more, DevOpsy, right? So you wanted to integrate a lot of security into the aspect of, the DevOps, their DevOps system, so that things would the whole chain within the DevOps chain would be more secure, as well as helping the DevOps chain, or to automatically perform pen testing and all that kind of stuff, and actually determine whether or not there is any vulnerabilities inside of the application during, build time, and or I should say during automated testing and all that kind of stuff. So, no big deal. I've done that kind of stuff as well. Done a lot of that. I shouldn't say. Well, I'd say probably. Yeah, I mean most of the time when you work on a large scale application, that's what you got to do that stuff, right? It's part of the part of the process. So anyway, so I thought that interview, it went pretty bad. And the reason I would say, I mean, I don't really know why it went bad. It from my perspective, I mean, I thought my experience was great for it, but the individual that I was interviewing with, um, one, they came late. Two, they I guess I don't know. The only thing I can say is that when I appeared on camera, it's like I didn't obviously I didn't appear wearing a mask and a hat, but their whole aura changed. Their camera sort of popped up. They were sort of like busy looking at something and fixing something. Say, "Oh, I'll be with you in a moment," or whatever. I guess they were busy. Work is stressful. Obviously, it's a manager or a director or something like that. And and then as soon as that individual looked up and saw me at the camera, it was just like, I literally have a picture of this person, and because I was it was so funny to me. I took a quick screenshot photo. Like, oh goodness. I mean, the person was just like looking at she's like shocked, literally shocked when she looked at me. And I don't look. I'm not a horrible. I'm not disfigured or anything. I'm not horrible, or horribly disfigured or anything like that. That's what's kind of weird about it, right? So, but anyway, so from that standpoint, I mean, she literally stared at the screen for a little while, and I had to say, are you okay? It was hilarious, man. It was hilarious. I don't know. Anyway, so that's how the interview started off. So it didn't start off great. I didn't know what was going on. I figured, I don't know, maybe I don't know what. Anyway, so we just went through the interview, and she asked me questions, and then it just seemed like after the first two questions, she just lost interest because then she went back to just saying, and then she went back to just doing what she was doing, and then I would answer her question, and she'd be like, oh, okay, like basically I wasn't really even hardly there. So yeah, so it didn't go great, it didn't go well. I was prepared. Um, Usually, yeah, I'm pretty much always prepared when it comes to anything technical or anything related to software development. I'm always ready to go. So I like software. I love it. That's what I do. So it's not something that I have to actually sit down and write something up or prepare or something like that. I'm just, yeah, hey, you want to talk software? Let's go. No problem. Especially when it comes to my experience and what I have deep experience doing. There's what I have production level experience, and then there's my experimental side that does a lot of experimenting and setting up and doing all kinds of stuff, right? So that's software. It's the beauty of it. Anyway, so that's that interview with that automotive organization. Then I had another interview that was a government contractor, and that actually turned into a series of interviews. I got to interview four. The first two interviews were great, went very well, and really after the second interview, I thought it was a lock. Then I had the third interview where I had basically it was a bunch of managers, and they're asking me. It was like I think about yeah, about five managers, and they're asking me various questions about my experience. So I'll go into detail, I'll talk about it and whatnot, and at this point in time, I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm going to get a technical interview or something like that, but really, I didn't get any technical, no technical interview at all, which was kind of weird to me. Um, and even if it was like it was manager level, right? But really, they really just seemed to enjoy hearing about my experience. I mean, they were really engaged, so that was pretty cool. And I thought everything was awesome, and I thought it was a lot, but um, then I had interview number four, and during interview number four, everything just sort of changed up, which was kind of weird for the position I was interviewing. Then I started getting all these other questions about not that was not inside the job description at all, and was not on my resume. So it's kind of like, well, okay. you know, Basically they asked me things like if I know anything about codexes or anything like that. Um, Essentially video stream manipulation, those kind of things, which I've read about and reviewed code on, but I haven't actually done anything with, meaning I haven't actually manipulated any code or done anything like that at that level. So I just told them that, hey, but I think for them it seemed like as if um, I'm probably it doesn't make sense. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what the whole issue was there and why it didn't continue and progress. But after that interview, it was just like, oh well, that was it. So four interviews and lots of time. That was a lot of time. I'd say it was definitely over 6 hours of time. Just doing all of those interviews like sort of put together, and that's it. Nothing. Ghosting. I essentially just received an email saying, "Oh, we're not moving forward." And I was like, "Okay." Any feedback? Nothing. Nothing. No technical interview. Nothing. So that was weird. So that was that. interview. Then I had an interview with a nonprofit organization, which was interesting. This is for developing, basically actually modernizing one of their workforce applications. So I have experience with various workforce applications, um, from Salesforce to things that are less known, like maybe what do you call it, Workforce Central or Workforce Pro, and I got things like customer Oracle customer care and billing, meter data management. So these are large scale applications for doing a lot of large scale work within organizations, um, for big time enterprise resource applications, customer care applications, CRM stuff like that. So I've done all of that stuff as well, in addition to development. Things like Pega. Um, you know, that's that's another animal all to itself. The Pega low code development, right? So I've gotten into the internal intricacies of how that stuff works as well. Interesting system, interesting method of designing an application, I would say. It's very interesting. But yeah, so anyway, so now this interview, how did that go? It didn't go well either. That this just didn't go well, because, and I'm not sure why, it didn't quite make sense. So right away, actually, I had the first interview. First interview went well because she was like, "Hey, I can tell that you have the skills and exactly what we're looking for." I'm like, "Oh, this is great." So now we get to the second interview. So this second interview was with two individuals. Um, and then right away, they're telling me, "Oh, let me hear about your experience." So I go ahead, give them lay down about my experience with this particular application that they're talking about. And um, you know, first she set the groundwork saying, "I want to let you know that this is an extremely technical position." So I'm like, "Oh, great. So that's great. Good for me." So anyway, so we go ahead, I go through my experience, I discuss that, and then she said, then it's like, well, we need somebody who's extremely technical. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I would think by definition, me being a software engineer, that's technical, but especially for a nonprofit organization, you're talking about extremely technical. I'm like, well, I'm like, maybe they're doing something like building a time machine or something. I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, so we go ahead. So I was like, okay, well. So then I gave some more about my experience. We got into the weeds. We're talking about low level stuff, right? And then I'm talking about, you know, low level things and then going all the way up to the application level, which to me doesn't really, entail, uh, didn't really entail the application that they want to actually modernize. And essentially, they're just looking to migrate from that application to a newer version, which I've done several times. Um, so anyway, but I actually talked about the application in the very beginning and my experience related to that application, and then we went on to, I guess that wasn't extremely technical. I don't know. And then she said it one more time. She said, I'm sorry, we're just looking for somebody extremely technical. So I'm like, okay, well, what the hell does that mean? I'm weirded out here because so now I had to ask her. I said, okay, can you give me an example of what extremely technical means? What do I have to actually say in order to be, I guess, extremely technical? Because I really don't know. And then that's when the other individual chimed in and said, we want this and then, and I was just like, okay, yeah, cool. So I get that. So I said, yeah, sure, that's not a problem. This is what I would do. This is how I approach things. This is what and so that was that. So basically, either they don't, from that interview, it's like either they don't know what they want, or um, they just didn't want me. So either one of the two, right? Take your pick. Who knows? But anyway, ultimately, just they went with somebody else. Supposedly, okay. And the funny thing about it is that I actually worked on the actual internals of that particular kind of application for many customers. So that's why during the first interview, they knew that I had the skills necessary to actually go ahead and do what it is they need to do because I've actually worked on the internals. It's different, right? When you're actually the person who actually who worked with the vendor, right? I got to contacts, and whatnot for that particular vendor in there, so that still work on the internals. So why wouldn't I be like a shoo-in for it? I don't know. Who knows? Right? So it's kind of like, so having that kind of inside track and that ability to help and give them what they needed, I don't know. I thought that would have been like golden opportunity for someone who would be able to just get it done like that. And then from there, as I said, I should say, from my understanding as well, that was one aspect of their modernization. And there's other things that they wanted to modernize. So somebody that would have the ability to work inside of that system as well as work on the bigger ecosystem of applications that they had, from my understanding of the first interview, is what you want. And that's what I brought to the table, but it just didn't work out. So, for whatever reason. Anyway, so there was that, and what else? So, oh, and then I had another interview with an organization who makes what do they make? They make sort of a modernized, uh, resume intake system, let's say. All right. And basically what their system does is to actually help organizations with taking in thousands of resumes, performing AI analysis on the resumes so that they can filter out the ones that actually would be useful for this particular job role. That's pretty much what the application does. And so they were looking to get somebody in here, or get somebody in there that would help them with the effort of making all of these different kinds of integrations, and doing a lot of back testing with the various LLMs that they were using to, work that workflow, which at that point in time, I haven't done exactly something like that in production, but I've done a lot of work and experimentation with LLMs at that point, various things like LinkChain and LinkGraph and all that kind of stuff to make various flows, Airflow, Apache Airflow, stuff like that, to make different flows and to understand how these mechanisms works, like the mechanics of the mechanisms for working these kinds of chains, as well as how to actually what I would say, debug them, right? So you got another link. I forgot what the yeah. So essentially, there's another technology that you use to actually debug these workflows. So yeah. So anyway, so I've worked through all that. So at that point in time, so I've discussed my background, or I should say the experiments that I've conducted with that, and my familiar the technologies that I'm particularly familiar with as it related to what they're currently working on. Of course, we got Tensor and Python and all that other stuff, right? And all these other Python libraries as well that I've used. Pretty much what I've done is designed a chain of information to flow through, and then use various technologies to re-implement that same chain over and over to see the various mechanics of how those things work, right, within different frameworks. So you got the Python way of doing things with your TensorFlows and all the various libraries, and then you got your things like LinkChain and LinkGraph and all that kind of stuff, and other things, other technologies that are available for manipulating and using LLMs. Anyway, so that didn't go well because essentially they said, "Hey, we're looking to actually go ahead and make this company, and we're looking to sell this company right away." So I said, "Oh yeah, that's cool. That's fine with me." And then they said, "Oh, but if you're looking for a more stable environment, then this is not for you." So I'm like, "Well, yeah, for me it doesn't really matter. I'm looking for an environment to jump in and do some software development and make software, based on my experience, and continue to add value wherever I can. All right. So whatever that is, let's go. Let's do it. You know, it sounds like to me, at least to me, it sounds like my background would be a fit, but I guess they didn't see it that way. So, so, so yeah, so that didn't work out, and then that's pretty much Uh, pretty much. I had one more interview with a banking organization for essentially modernizing the workflow, dealing with I guess a large set of basically processing files. These are your files that are used for doing banking and stuff like you know ACH processing and all that kind of stuff. So and that one actually went well, and they thought I was a great candidate and this and that. But they went with somebody else, but they were willing to give me a recommendation for another internal position. So, which I've applied for, but I haven't heard anything. So anyway, so those are some of the interviews I've had, some of the strategies I've taken, and unfortunately, one of the strategies that I see that is probably working or helping is using a lot of these automated tools to automatically fill out job applications. And I think that is going to help you, but it also is a hindrance too, because if you're doing it, obviously thousands of other people are doing it. And so what happens is you have a system that's overwhelmed. All right, you have these applications that are overwhelmed by all of the job applications that they're getting. Some people are very qualified for it. Maybe some people are not as qualified for it. Whatever, who knows? But the internal systems that do the intake for all these resumes have lots and lots of resumes, and then these recruiters or the front end people have to actually sort through all this stuff. And so I suppose the application that they were developing, one of the companies that I interviewed for, that's pretty much why they're needed, right? Because they need these companies now need to be able to filter through all these resumes to find out, hey, who's the right candidate for this particular role or opportunity. So, okay, cool. But as I said, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's not going to go away, right? The method for applying to jobs, using automated technologies to apply to jobs is not going to go away, right? That's been let out of the bag, so to speak. And it was already there, but now it's even more so now. Of course, now we have all of these AI tools, and there's very many plugins for like Chrome and all that kind of stuff that will literally, you know, it'll learn the intricacies of a particular job site. Like, every company has their own application application structure. Some of them use a particular, vendor, whatever it is, or whatever. But anyway, these plugins or extensions, whatever you want to call them, they actually will learn the layout of the job application, and it will keep your information locally on your system, of course, and it will then apply to the job. It can just automatically apply to the job. And it's just like, oh wow. And then you have other external tools that will automatically change your resume to fit the job. So with those two combined, you really don't really need to actually sit at the computer anymore to apply for a job. All you have to really do is just say, apply to apply to X amount of jobs for the week for me. Boom, and it'll just do it. That's it. So that's where we're at. It's a proliferation of tools that allow that to occur, and as a result, a lot of these organizations get overwhelmed by a lot of applications. And of course, granted, there's a lot of layoffs going on. So the more layoffs there are, the more competition there is for jobs. And that's basically where we're at. Um, it's well, will it change? I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough right now. I don't see any change. I don't see any change on the horizon. I mean, I hear some people say, no, hey, developers are back, whereas software engineering is back, and people are not getting fired because of AI or whatever it is. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. In some cases they are, in some cases they're not. It doesn't really matter. The real question is, are there enough hard problems uh, for us to hire all of these individuals that are out there? Right? That's the question, right? Because a lot of all the frame we got, there's an ocean of frameworks and an ocean of this and that. So we've solved the same problems over and over many times. And there's really no need to continue to work on on a lot of those problems. Not to say that obviously there's always something to work on, but in order to make the application better and more useful for a user. Um, but anyway, but who knows? Who knows what is on the horizon? I have many ideas on that, but that's probably another video. All right, see you guys later.